we're going to talk a little bit about AI too. Because,
I love it. I love it. This is going to be a wide-ranging conversation.
It's going to be a conversation for the ages.
The ages.
But
get your popcorn.
To start this, I want to say you are our first English-speaking guest that we're recording for this show called ¿Por qué no los dos? I picked the name of the show because I know it's like a thing that people here in the States it's like a phrase that people are familiar because it's like a commercial, right? Okay. Yeah, I don't think I have maybe seen the commercial once or something, and I always think that it's usually when people here try to say that they speak Spanish, jokingly they say like the bathroom, like the library, and this one. It's like del baño, la biblioteca, and ¿por qué no los dos? So I was like, wow, this is kind of, I don't know.
It's fitting. I'm honored to be a guest.
Maybe we'll get sued about that. Who knows? We'll see.
That's okay. Hey, honestly, that memeans you made it, right? If someone's sending you a cease and desist, that means you're on someone's radar. You're doing it.
Exactly.
It's great.
So I want to do a quick, that this show is brought to us thanks to La Hacienda. We do branding, creative work, media production, video editing, design. So it's kind of that's the platform where this show it's gonna live, and all the other things that might come out of this show. So I wanted to do that. Check us out. Is lahacienda.media for our website, and then in social media you can find us at lahacienda_media on Instagram and TikTok, and you can find me on social media also at Gons Veloz. Nina, are you on social media? This is your moment.
am. I'm at Nina P. Butler.
Nina P. Butler. So we have my friend Nina here to give her a quick introduction, and then I'll let her introduce herself. She is a marketing executive, and she is a powerhouse in the marketing, in the B2B SaaS marketing space. I have been fortunate enough to work with Nina. In a past company, we worked together for like a few years, and then I have worked as a freelancer with Nina for a while, and we have been working together and been friends for years at this point. And I'm really happy to have her here because she is a person that something that she did that I really admire is that she did such a lateral move in her career. She had a career in hospitality, and then she transitioned into software and just kind of, took from there, and the sky's the limit now. And that's something that I wanted to talk with you about, because I think that's something important to talk about these days, right? People are trying to figure it out, not only what they want to do, but also trying to find the perfect intersection of what they love doing and what they want to do for a career. And sometimes that takes lateral move, that I think is the hardest type of move in a career. And I think you're one of the best examples about that. So I wanted to let you introduce yourself a little bit, and then we can get going and talk about that and a few other things.
Gons, that was beautiful. That was arguably the absolute best introduction I've ever had the good fortune of receiving. I feel like I should just leave. I don't know. No. My day's not going to get any better. That was really kind. But I'm super happy to be here. As Gons mentioned, my name is Nina Butler. My current role, I'm the head of marketing at a B2B SaaS company called Regie.ai. It's in the ever topical AI space, but we really help accelerate and automate a lot of the SDR and sales reps function that, let's be honest, humans aren't designed to do and don't get much joy doing. So we're in the business of helping sales teams win more. But hopefully today I can share a little bit more about my story, my journey. I get asked this question a lot because you're right. On paper, I'm a bit of an unconventional candidate for a marketing role for B2B tech. But if you actually dig under the surface, there are a lot of parallels, a lot of similarities, and a lot of kind of lessons learned that I think can be helpful if folks are looking to make changes like I've made.
So you have been in a few companies in this space, in the B2B marketing space at this point. And I think before that, right? You're from Massachusetts?
Yes, I am.
You're from Massachusetts. So, well, it's interesting because Massachusetts, more Boston, and the greater Boston area has become a big hub for startups, and I think that's kind of how like a lot of people like us have landed in different kind of things in our careers. But I want to kind of go back, and then where do you go to school?
Yeah. Oh man, Guns, talk about non-linear transitions in your career. Do you just want me to start at the beginning? Is that going to be helpful?
I mean, it can be a little bit of like, what you started here in Massachusetts, you went to high school, and then you went far away and you came back. Because, I mean, one of the things that I also wanted to talk to you about is Boston. Because I have been here for a while. You have been here, I mean, a long time. But I think it's always funny to hear like a little bit of the perspectives, especially from people that have never really kind of heard about the city. That's maybe like some of the people, like maybe the 2.5 people that are gonna listen or watch this, they might see, oh wow, like, because I don't really talk about that experience a lot, about living here and how it is and the stuff that I like and the stuff that I don't like, but I think it'll be fun to cover a little bit of that with you.
These are all my favorite topics.
So let's get back to that okay, you are young Nina. Yeah. You're figuring life out. You are just graduating high school. Yeah. What was all right? What were you trying to figure it out?
So many moons ago at this point, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I actually envied students and kids or young people who were like, I know this is exactly what I want to do. I'm going to put myself down this path. I'm going to study this. I'm going to be that career. And I always looked at that and was like, if that is the level of conviction I need to have when I'm 18 years old on anything, like, I don't got it, right? And so I actually went to a liberal arts school because I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do, right? And so I didn't know if I wanted to go to business school. I didn't know if I wanted to go to art school. I didn't have a lot of clarity in terms of what I wanted to do in 10 years. But I felt as though going to a liberal arts school, I would be enriched on the softer skills. I would learn how to write. I would learn how to articulate my ideas. I would learn just sort of the softer attributes of academia. So I went to a liberal arts school. And crazy enough, again, when you look at my resume, you're like, it's hard to follow the bouncing ball. I went to school for invertebrate paleontology, which is essentially it's.
So you're talking about like creatures that don't have.
Exactly. So a lot of people are like, dinosaurs, cool. And I was like, no, it wasn't even that cool. It was basically microscopic organisms that you find in sedimentary rocks. And it can, that information can help things like, discover oil and date outcrops and things like that. So I went to school for that. And interestingly enough, I didn't set out on that path, but I loved math. I like totally was a math nerd growing up. I love numbers. I love like how black and white it is. It's a right answer. It's a wrong answer. And I think that's how my brain works more times than not. And so I went to school learning math. And then like 2 years in, I was so bored, Gons. I was like, get me out of this classroom. I don't want to do another problem on a whiteboard. It was a chalkboard, actually. We didn't even have whiteboards. I don't want to do another problem on a chalkboard. I want to be outside. I grew up on an island. I love being on the water. I love being in nature. And I was like, how could I fuel my love of numbers and science, but do it in an outdoor setting? And actually an advisor of mine was like, well, you should get a degree in geology. And then therefore I ended up concentrating on what I concentrated on, which was cool. I traveled the world. I've seen the oldest rocks on planet Earth, Gons. They're beautiful.
Where are they?
They're in England.
Okay.
But they're about 4 billion years old. The Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. So these are about 4 billion years old. And they're beautiful, but they're really unassuming. It's like if you're driving out on 90 West on the Mass Pike here in Massachusetts, and you just like kind of drive by these kind of cool, but seemingly normal rocky outcrops. It looks just like that, but you actually get up to it and it's pretty fantastic.
I want to say though, I didn't know you went to school for that. I wanted to ask you though, once you started talking, if a part of it was because of where you grew up, because I know you grew up in this island that is like a very specific, let's say, environment, because it's around here in New England. So New England is like a specific type of place, right? And it's interesting because there's a lot of there's a lot of nature and that it's native of here.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you if it was because of that. So yeah, it's cool that was one of the reasons.
It was one of the reasons. But it was.
But I'm very surprised about all this information. This is so crazy. Did you minor in something else? Did you minor?
I did. I minored in this. I think dovetails into sort of now how my career has taken shape. But I minored in education studies. I thought maybe I'd wanted to be a teacher, maybe a math teacher, maybe a math professor. But I love teaching. I love mentoring. I love nurturing. Like those are very important. I grew up and, I was a sport captain. Like I just love this idea of like helping to raise up others. And so I thought maybe I'd want to be a teacher. So I got an education studies minor, and I actually worked in a handful of schools in the Boston area, which I really loved that time. I look back at that time pretty fondly. And I think it gave me a little taste for like how much I've come to love Boston. I think a lot of that's attributed to like being with the young folks and just being like, man, this is,
where in the city?
Yeah, I worked at Cambridge Ringe and Latin, which Ben Affleck went to. If anybody listening in watches Ben Affleck movies,
big. We are
big Ben guy. Big Ben
guy in this house.
Ben or J-Lo? Who you got?
I mean, I am Ben Affleck. Hannah is J-Lo, 100%. That's kind of like, and we send
Who's Alfie.
Alfie, I would say Alfie's
Matt Damon.
Alfie's Matt Damon, exactly. We are sending each other memes all the time. And in the topic of Boston, something that I love about Ben Affleck that it's hilarious. If you pay attention to a lot of his photos, so when he's like miserable, smoking a cigarette or buying Dunkin' Donuts every morning, he usually wears band T-shirts.
Oh.
And it's funny because there is a punk hardcore record label here in Massachusetts called Bridge 9. They are in Beverly, I think. Okay. And they are the ones also that do those T-shirts from like that brand Sully's.
Oh, yeah.
So it's that people. So I don't know if he might like the bands or not, but it's cool that you sometimes see him like Bridge 9, Boston.
I love that.
Or there's like a very cult like band from that label called Half Heart, and you see him with like a shirt, Half Heart. And it's hilarious because I always wonder, it's like, and I tell Hannah like a random thought is, do you think he might like those bands? Because
1,000%.
That will actually add more.
I feel like we'll come back to this with our Boston talk, but I actually have a lot of commentary on this specific example. I love this.
So going back to what we're talking about, you go to school for invertebrate.
You got it, invertebrate paleontology.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And then you don't love school, so you spend some time in the you minored in education. You are working in the education system here in Boston. So that's kind of what was like that first transition, because you went to school for this. You started on kind of like the path because you were working with schools, but then what was the next?
So I felt like so 4 years go by, lots of hard work. I graduate, and to be honest, I was like, I need a break. That was a big 4 years, right? And again, I looked around at peers and I was like, they went to med school, they went to business, they had these plans, and I was like, that's just not me. Like, I need a timeout. And so I took a timeout. And while this was all going on, like, I didn't have the luxury growing up of like having an internship. Like I've been working since I was 12 years old, right? And so while I'm going to school and all this great stuff, at the same time, any chance I can, I'm working. And my actual work was in hospitality and food and beverage, like you had mentioned. And so I graduate school and I'm sort of like, well, I can do one of two things. One, if I actually want to pursue a career in invertebrate paleontology and work for, the U.S. Geological Society, which is pretty natural. Like, I have to go to a lot more school. I have to get a PhD, and that's like another 7 or 8 years. Or I decide to pursue a professional career in the occupation I've already been doing, which is hospitality. And so that's the one I chose. And I'm glad I did, because it's obviously brought me to where I am today. But it was apples and oranges. I was like, I could go one way or the other on this. And I don't know what about me made me choose hospitality. I think, honestly, I was just broke after school. And I was like, I think I'd rather get working and, get, quote unquote, into the real world. And so I did. And I actually moved to Colorado for a brief moment in time and did some event work out there right after school.
You were saying something about the why choosing, but I think I worked in hospitality as well, and we have talked about it. Has its own magic. Mm-hmm. I can recall like, and I always talked about this with my wife, and I have so many dear friends from my time in hospitality that we talk every once in a while, and it's awesome. And if you go to a restaurant, they're working, they're gonna take care of you. It's like a connection that we shared, and it's just like a good friendship based on what we were going, because it's like such a, so many people from all these corners of the world working in restaurants. It's like such an interesting, but it has its own thing. It has like a lot of pros and cons. If you want to, I did it for a little bit, but I knew that was not going to be my career.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it a lot, and I went to culinary school when I was younger, so it kind of fed into that passion. And I love cooking, but my time there, it was tough. You don't make it.
You just get like verbally abused.
And it's like, and you go through like the craziest stuff, and it's like a time of your life that it's very enabling in the sense of, there's a lot of drinking, there's a lot of late nights, there's a lot of like.
But I think that, to your point, that like that's a bonding agent for better or worse, right? Yeah. Like you just are like with these people, and you want to like kill them and love them at the same time, but there's just something about that you get wrapped up in it.
Do you work in any spots that are still around, or you?
I did. Well, I never worked in Boston, so I did most of it on the Vineyard, and I feel like you love this story. I had the opportunity to wait on President Obama and the First Lady, which was like peak. Great. That was peak serving career.
Shout out Barry.
Shout out Barry and
Michelle.
Mish and Barry, love them. And to be honest, like some of my nicest customers that summer, which is saying something.
Were there a lot of celebrities that day?
A lot of
the other like people that live over there year long. That's like a weird place. There's so many random people that live.
It's so funny whenever I'm doing like like an icebreaker, and it's like, tell me about a celebrity encounter, blah blah blah. I have like dozens. Like it's like so commonplace because I grew up in this, kind of this destination, and anyways, it's like this bizarre microcosm of like normal people, like really blue collar, hardworking normal people, and then these like crazy celebrities.
But I think that's Boston. It's just
totally
kind of that there's like all these intellectuals, there's all these schools, there's all these there's like a cultural thing with Berkeley and the music and there's a lot of blue collar. There's a lot of people that have been here for generations and decades doing trade work, carpenter. Like it's very interesting. It's like and I think it's so strange in the topic of New England and Boston. You are from here, so you're familiar. But when I arrived here, this was for me. It was like, what the hell is? It was such a 180. I am Venezuela, like might be, but I'm from a city that it was like a city.
Totally.
And this is a city, but it's like such a different concept of a city, and the
it's a collection of neighborhoods,
and the weather, and the fact that it's like a place that has so many sports teams, and there was like so many crazy things, and going to that, I mean, I think Boston has some good restaurants. But I think this might be instant. I think that this place is not doing great.
It's not a culinary mecca. I tell that to people all the time. I have friends come and visit, and I'm a foodie. Like I don't, spend money on many things, but I love going out. I love, and probably because I've so fond of my hospitality days. I love sitting at the bar. I love watching everybody work. Like I just love being in it. But people are always like, oh, you must know all the great spots. Like I want to go to the best of the best. And I'm like, you should adjust your expectations.
I mean, no, there are hidden gems, but I feel that they are not in Boston.
No, exactly.
They're like in the adjacent cities.
Exactly.
So like,
exactly.
I mean, that's the thing. It's the greater Boston area, how they call it. There's always like that. I always see that meme of people get really mad when you say that you're from Boston, but you're from one of like the.
And then you're like, where? And you're like,
and it's like a whole thing that's hilarious. But
that's what I say I'm from Massachusetts. I don't claim to be from Boston, the great city of Boston.
I say now in like a very it's a self-absorbed, weird, artistic thing. I always say, no, I'm from New England. It's like,
ooh. That was serious.
It's like a new thing. It's like I'm gonna try it out.
I actually like that. I like that's classic. I might have to borrow that if you don't mind.
Who the hell do I think I am?
If you don't mind.
So, okay, you are in the hospitality
Yes.
industry. You did in the vineyard. You waited for the Obamas. Oh, was Spike Lee?
My dad was a carpenter, speaking of tradesman, and he built Spike Lee's house. So
See?
Spike and my dad were like actually like
Oh wow.
close friends. And I think honestly, like when you get back to this idea of art and creation with your hands, like they both had such a deep affinity for each other's commitment to their artwork, right? My dad was like, you're, one of the most talented, people that will likely ever live in this capacity. And then he looks at my dad and he's like, you take such pride and meticulous care in these really elegant homes you build. And they would just sit on the porch and have beers after each other's work days and just pick each other's brain on like what it's like to be a visionary, what it's like to be a creative. And they like really well, my dad's no longer here, but till recently they would pass each other on the road and give each other a little wave. Like they really loved each other.
That's so cool. That's well, but it speaks. It's like I mean, changing in the topic of ideas and creativity. And you said one thing earlier that I thought it was very interesting, that you say that your brain is very like black or white because you love math and and it's funny because I am not like that. I am completely not like that. Absolutely not. Math, I struggle with math. My brain works in a it's different, but we have been working together for years, different capacities. And I think you are one of the people that I always say that it has been the easiest to work with for me as a creative. And it's an interesting thing talking about that aspect of ideas and creativity, because even though in this story that Spike Lee and your dad, that they do different things, like Spike Lee, one of the most influential filmmakers there has ever been, and your dad was a carpenter, right? And it's just the act of creation that is connected them. Yeah. And it's funny because how people sometimes undermine creativity as its own thing is one of the few ways, or maybe the only way, that we can all really connect as human beings, and even professionally in our personal lives. It's like a way that really works. And it's funny because you're saying that, and we connected in that way, and connected in we're gonna create this. We gotta create this piece of work, and you're gonna come in with like the data and the information, or maybe more the factual stuff, and then I'll bring in the abstract, and we know that, and we'll see what happens. That's crazy. That story, that's so cool.
It was, yeah, it's very, very cool. Yeah, my dad actually I know we're getting off topic, but he taught him how to drive. He grew up in New York City. He'd never had a driver's license. My dad taught him how to drive.
Oh wow. This
is
hilarious. Like,
it's just so wild.
That's cool. That's so
very
cool.
Wild.
Did your dad have what was Spike Lee's his favorite movie from Spike Lee?
Oh, that's a great question, actually. I don't know if I ever asked him that. But anytime a new one would come out, we would watch it, and he just would. We watched his shoot, it's blanking on me. What are the masterclass? He did a masterclass. We watched that, and it was just like loved it. It just it was fun to keep up with his artwork.
He has a very intricate process. He has like its own. That's why he is where he is. Oh wow, that's so cool. Okay, so getting back on track here. So when was the moment that you decide to, okay, I am done kind of with this hospitality thing. I want something different. What was it because you were burned out? Was it because you didn't kind of work, you were not seeing as your career long term at the moment? Or was it just simple, I need something else and maybe I'll come back?
So I had, so I moved to Colorado for a little while after college. And at that point I had been in, event design and production, hospitality, food and beverage, wedding planning. Like I kind of run the gamut. And I moved back to Boston. This was in 2013 or 2014. And I used it as an opportunity to be like, maybe now I start down a new path, right? Like I got a little sidetracked after college. And maybe now is when I'm a little bit older, a little bit quote unquote wiser. I think about what could be next for me. And actually a mentor of mine who I had made when I moved back to the city had said, and you brought this up earlier, she was getting really into the tech scene. And she was like, Nina, I know you want to make a change. However, I know you've come to love like very distinct attributes of working in hospitality. Like I'm an incredibly relationship motivated person. I actually really love like the highest of highs and lowest of low. Like I just love riding that wave. I love to serve people. Like I feel like my customer obsession like went off the charts after, literally and figuratively serving people for 13 years. And so she like took all that and she's like, I think it might translate really well into tech. And Boston was just becoming this kind of tech hub that now it is today, but this was, about 10 years ago. And so I was like, I've seen Silicon Valley, but I don't really know what you mean when you say a tech company. Like it was so unfamiliar to me. So I like did a little research and I was like, okay, like there could be some overlaps, some similarities here. And that's when I first sunk my teeth into. And I was actually my first job was for a B2C tech company. Like there was more of a consumer application than businesses, but that's like where I cut my teeth and I just have absolutely loved it ever since. She was spot on. Shout out Kate.
Were you doing events for them or what?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so I think you that's kind of your thing. I feel like you love doing that. And but I think that informality of startups always translates really well from people that come from the hospitality industry. I know I worked with somebody else that she worked at the Ritz for a while, and then she transitioned to tech and we worked together in a company and she did so well because it was that same thing. It's funny because going back to that idea of you being so binary in the way that you think, that you are so comfortable in this like insanity chaos and you say that you love like the highest of highs and lowest of lows, which like you said is very common in startups. We can share many stories of insane moments that we have,
even as recent as this morning
as morning as where we're recording this show, because I entered the tech industry around 7 or 8 years ago here, and it was it was pretty early. It was that idea of the startup and the very informal company, the kind of everybody's kind of casual, and it was just it was trying to disrupt the way people work, the way people, and that has been happening for more than 10 years. But here in Boston, that was kind of like it was like a big moment where a lot of really big companies started to come out of the fold and do really well, and starting with HubSpot and other companies. And something that is interesting that I want to tell a little story. When I was a kid, my dad worked in media and stuff, and there was a very specific place in Caracas in Venezuela that it was the offices for channels that my dad worked for, and it was this place. It was like the HBO Latin America, and they had like all these TV channels, and it was the first time that I saw an informal office, right? And we're talking about, this was more than 20, like probably 20 years ago or so, but it was just crazy to see just people kind of casual going to the office, coming in and coming out of the time, and things still working. That being said, in the case of startups, that usually sometimes does not happen. It's very casual, whatever, but stuff is not working. Yes. So that's but when I was a kid, that was like such a, and I remember saying as a kid, like, oh, I'm never gonna wear a suit I want to work in a place like this, because in Venezuela, even the culture of work is still way behind compared to how it is here. But that idea for me, and then when I end up here and I'm working in hospitality, and then when I decided to enter the startup, it was just kind of what the right fit was for me as well. That informality, that casual, that you have like a more direct approach with people with like a more experience, because I remember that in the times there was just like a lot of people switching from big companies and Fortune 500s to startups. So there was just like this easy access to a lot of super legit people that you would work with. And I think that's part of why it's such a like an intense process sometimes to work for a startup. It can be like going to like an accelerated like an MBA program at school.
Absolutely.
It can be like really crazy, but it also can be a very taxing, miserable thing. It can be because it's quoting Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, and sometimes the people that run all these companies are not up to the responsibility, and
that's a great way to put it.
Not often it's being said, but let's say
that's a great way to put it. Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of what crashes a lot of these companies. But going back to the initial side, where a few years ago younger Nina, younger Gonzalo. We were looking at all these tech companies, and where was you start on this first one doing events, and then what happened next?
Yeah. So I was there about 5 years or so. And I kind of have this, well, now I can label it, but at the time I didn't know how to like wrap good old startups. Now I'm like all about the framework. So now I have a framework. But I kind of have these like 3 components of when I know it's time to leave a role. The first one, well, it's burned, earned, and learned, right? So burned is like, am I burnt out, right? Once you're burnt out, it's hard to come back from that. Earned is like, have I maxed out my potential here, right? Is there, and I don't always mean monetary, but like, is there room for me to keep growing here? Or have I totally superseded my earning level? And then learned is, am I not learning anymore, right? And so I kind of think like, if 3 of the 3 are great, like shut up and do the work, right? If 2 of the 3 are great, shut up and do the work. But if 1 out of 3 are great, it's time to start looking. And then if no of 3 are there, it's like, you better be packing your bags and finding a new opportunity. So I came up and I was like, all right, my ratio is all wrong. It's time for me to make a change. And I went back to the same mentor. And, I kind of described like what I wasn't loving about my opportunity anymore. And she made this really astute observation. She said, you spent, the first part of your career in hospitality, and you became obsessed with creating, in great ways, but obsessed with creating experiences for individual people, which is true. Like I would plan a wedding and it's like, I am living for the experience of the bride, or I'm living for the experience of somebody else. I am working in a restaurant and it's somebody's 50th wedding anniversary. Like I am all eyes on making that a fantastic, memorable night for somebody. And she's like, you now are working on a consumer brand where instead of creating experiences for one person, you're creating them for millions of people at once. And therefore it has to be like a little bit more anonymous and a little bit less personal. And I was like, that's really interesting. Like, you're right. I'm not loving that I'm just like mass marketing to millions of people so they buy stuff on our website. And she's like, I think you should now consider maybe B2B tech, because instead of 1 million customers, you might have 1,000 customers, right? That are great fits for your product or service or solution. So that's when I was like, all right, I'm going to switch gears. But similarly, I had no business being in B2B tech because I had no experience. And so it's all about like taking inventory of what you're excellent at, and then using that in your interviews or in your pitching to say like, I don't have the same experience, but I have very similar experience. And let me articulate for you like what I've done from consumer marketing that I think would be highly transferable to B2B marketing. And that's how I landed at Alyce, which was my first foray into B2B tech.
Well, Alyce, where we worked together for like almost 3 years or 3 years. That was a blur. But something that you said there that I think is very important, though.
Time out.
So one thing that you were saying that I think it's important, and I think it's an idea there. One of the things that people struggle with in lateral moves is that it's hard to sell and convince a hiring manager or somebody about your skills. And it becomes more a matter of this whole idea of breaking the glass ceiling. It's just, if a person like you that went through hospitality and all that, and then gets the opportunity, gets their foot in the door, gets up in their career ladder, and then and you see somebody that it wants to get into organization, and it's more about like, oh, I see the skills this person have, and you can see it because you're like, oh, that a lot of people are not going to see it because some people are more focused on, I don't know, if this person went to an Ivy League, or if they have an MBA, or if they're friends with whoever friends, or if they're the nephew of the venture capitalist, or something like that. It's just, one of those things. But I think it becomes that. It's what you're saying of figure out what you're excellent at, try to package that in a way that, and then you enter, and then you got to help the next person kind of do it as well. Because that's the way it happened for me. I'm sure, like the way you're saying it, there was that connection of that person that helped you get in the foot in the door. And then we share our time at Alyce, that it's a company that would do this personalized gifting experiences. One thing that I loved was the idea of reducing waste. It was very big for that in the aspect of the company. Reducing waste and charitable options, of being able to donate money. The company, I think they reached over $1 million in donations or something. amazing milestones. So kind of to leave it in the great things about that place, it's just let's talk about that. And I think something that was pretty transformative in my time with you there was we were in this company that at the time was a Series B company, or they raised a Series B, and that's a very complicated time for a company. I have worked in a couple other places that were in kind of similar paths, because it's a big make or break.
Yes.
It's kind of like when a band is on their like second, third record that
great
you
call.
got some fame. Like the sophomore record is usually a tough one.
You got some money in your pocket, but like you can't blow it now.
Yeah, because or you get overconfident and you make childish decisions, and things can go wrong really fast.
Yes.
So I think then it's just and I think it's very aligned and in the process of creativity and this whole process of making rational and emotional decisions. That's something that I quote from. Do you remember Luigi Palencia, the designer?
Of course.
Shout out
Alyce.
Luis,
Luis, we love
aka
you.
Thres. Shout out, New York designer, a Venezuelan designer that lives in New York that did the branding for us.
So good.
But he says that, and that's an idea that I always quote because it's such a process for that, and like the way these companies operate and the way that we try to figure it out. Important moments in our career when we're in the crossroads. And so we go through our time at Alyce. We did a lot of awesome stuff. We worked in all sorts of campaigns. What was your favorite thing about that time that we shared there?
Oh,
in
man.
the marketing team.
There were a lot of bright spots. One, I think the creative delivery of the brand, like, so when you think about an early stage company, like chances are the product's not there. And therefore, you need something else to manufacture momentum in the market and build a moat for you until your product can catch up. And I think in our instance, our brand was our moat, right? Like we had people tripping over themselves, wanting to be a part of what we were making before they even really went under the hood of the car and inspected the product. And that's in large contribution to like the brand and the experience that you create around something that you can't really see, right? Like it's hard to see software. Like sure, you can then get into an app and click around, but it's not like where I came from a consumer standpoint where it's like you can literally pick up the thing you ordered and bought and you love it or you leave it, or like you don't have a tangible always part of your product like you do in B2C. And so one of my most favorite experiences was one, like I think the creative liberty that we were given to help rethink and reimagine what a best-in-class, enviable, viral brand can be for a B2B tech company. And we also were in a space, Gons, that was super competitive. Like there were hundreds at the end of the day competitors, and we all probably do really similar things from a feature function standpoint at the end of the day. And so the brand again is something that you can kind of wedge yourself in on the market. So I look back at all of like our creative portfolio, which honestly is an almost exclusive tip of the cap to you. But two, like I think the culture we created within the marketing team in particular was something I look back on fondly. Like I think I like to say we took what we did incredibly seriously, but we didn't take ourselves incredibly seriously. And by that, I mean, like we were really proud of the caliber of work that we had expectations to continue to produce, but we had a ton of fun doing it behind the scenes. And like, it was an ego-free, for the most part, environment. And we could all just like show up as the best versions of ourselves and work on things collaboratively. And I just like made the process really enjoyable. And that's what stands in my memory.
That's a great, that was it was a great team. It was one of my favorite teams that I've been a part of, because there was just like a great balance of fun, there was like some tough moments, but there were so many great moments, great projects, great things that we did. And I think it was always for me the highlight that it was just easy to work the projects. It was just kind of, we would show up and knew that what we were trying to do, and we were just kind of all aligned. And I felt for the first time that it was a team. I mean, with my general experience in a lot of companies, it's like people are kind of out for themselves when you work on a team, because everybody's just trying to figure it out. How can I mean, not everybody's like that, but there's people that are like that they're trying. And this team was very kind of no frills, no bullshit. the team. We care for each other. If there's issues, we talk about it.
Yep.
And from top to bottom, we kind of, we're tight.
Yeah.
And I think that was such a awesome thing, and it reflected on the work. And I agree, it was a very awesome moment for my career as well.
Yeah. And I think
we got to meet, so that was great.
I mean, which is, slam dunk. Podcast over.
Drop the mic, flip the desk.
But I will say, that was probably the most trusting team I've ever been a part of. And it's just amazing that that all shines through your work at the end of the day, right? Like, you can tell that the people powering that creative experience or that campaign or whatever, had a lot of fun doing it. And that just exudes from everything that we did. And I look back on that even now, and I still reference things that we did to be like, that's my inspiration for this next thing, like that job that we did, 3 years ago.
So after that, you landed where you're now. It's a company called Regie, a company that it's go-to-market, as they call it now, space. So
yep.
After we talk a little, I want to ask you something about the acronyms.
Oh yeah.
But you're in this company called Regie, and the AI space and the go-to-market space, the head of marketing. Mm-hmm. You have been there for how long? And
just over a year now at this point.
It's a leadership position. You run the marketing team, so stakes are higher, more moving pieces. The ship is harder to steer. Mm-hmm. What has been your favorite part of this kind of new frontier, and also what has been the most complex part? Because you did the lateral move already, but you kind of did lateral and up. It's kind of okay.
I think some of the tougher parts have been all the newness, to be quite honest. It's no one thing, but I think I underestimated. I always try to find new opportunities for myself that are 50% kicking me out of the nest, never done this, gonna be a little scary as I probably plummet. And then the other 50% is I've done this, I got this, I have high levels of confidence. That to me is the perfect blend to keep me motivated and excited and growing, but not too far out over my skis. I think when I first joined here, there was imbalance in that ratio. I felt like there was more newness than not. And I started to get in my head a little bit about it. And I think it just made me reflect on all the things I've taken for granted maybe in my career. One, I've always had a CMO, a VP, a CEO, someone who is sort of my connective tissue to the rest of the executive team or the rest of the board or whatever it may be. And that is a luxury to have someone who can kind of be a daily thought partner in a way, right? And when you don't have that, it's just bone on bone. So one is getting outside of your inner circle at your work and now going into your external network and being now I got to build up this suite of people that they can be my thought partners, even though they don't work in these four walls. So that's just an example of a lot of new things. But one of my most favorites, or some of my most favorite parts about this, is I talk to some marketers who could care less about what they're marketing, and good on them, right? They're as long as there's product market fit, and as long as the job is mildly interesting, I'll do it. I have to have some affinity for the product that I'm marketing or the service I'm marketing. I ideally have to be the customer of that at the end of the day, because that's the only way I know how to make my work authentic, right? If I can actually see myself in that experience. And so, for instance, at Alyce, I was incredibly, for all those reasons you listed and then some, I was really drawn to the problem that was being solved. And an example there is in hospitality, relationships are everything there, right? And we use gifting often as a way to express our love and our appreciation and our gestures of thanks to people in our personal life. But businesses have a hard time applying that. So I was really drawn to that concept at Regie. What we're trying to do is basically improve sales outreach. Sales has gotten this reputation over time where it's just oh, it's icky, it's spammy, it's noisy, it's selfless. You silence your phone from telemarketers. You just would do anything to avoid a sales rep now. And Reggie's trying to change that experience and dynamic. And that resonates with me because I get pitched all the time and I'm just oh, this is so icky and not how you build relationships, people. And so for me, I think the most exciting part is that I picked another company that I've grown even closer to the mission and the problem that we're trying to solve. And sometimes it's a little hard to know that with conviction when you start on day one, right? You're rolling the dice a little bit when you do it.
Before we continue, how's your time?
Let me double check real quick. Dun, dun, dun. I do have to wrap it up in about 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, so to wrap it up, I wanna ask you first. This is first before we talk a little bit about Boston. What are your favorite 3 acronyms?
Oh my God! Like of all time or in business?
I mean, in business, of course. It needs to be like the buzzwordy one.
Wow, my 3 favorite acronyms. I don't know if I have a favorite one. I have words and expressions that revolt me. Maybe I could talk about those.
What are the ones that keep you up at night?
Hard pass, synergy. Don't ever come down my street and say synergy.
Hard pass, synergy. Okay, okay, synergy is okay.
Hard pass on rocket ship. We are on a rocket ship.
Okay. Okay. Let's talk about least.
These are like my
least favorite. Okay, buzzwords. Okay, I agree. Synergy,
I'm flipping the script a little.
Rocket ship. Okay.
And then I think my third one is circle back. We're just gonna circle back on this.
January. So we just finished.
It's a big circle back month.
Big circle back.
So sometimes it's easier to say what you don't like than what you do like.
Well, since we're running short on time, to kind of wrap it up and talk a little bit about our affinity for Boston. Mm-hmm. From your time here, you have been here, for like forever. What are your favorite 3 things about Boston? And what are your least favorite 3 things? No particular order.
Okay, no particular order. So some of my most favorite things about Boston is one, the sports teams, sports culture, like sports as a unifying agent. I mean, I grew up pretty sporty, and I lived here when it was like peak sport capital of the universe. And then I've lived in other cities and I'm like, why don't y'all care about, and they're like, good game, nice try. And I'm like, nice try. Like you should be a lunatic about the sports teams you root for. Cause that's all I've ever known. So I got to give a shout out to the sports. 2, I love how proud people are that are from here, that have lived here for a while. Like, granted, I haven't lived in many other places, but I take a lot of satisfaction in people that love where they're from. They love that their businesses are multi-generationally owned. They keep their neighborhoods, clean and active. Like they care a lot about where they're from. And I think that that's an attribute of a lot of people in New England. And I don't know why that is, but like a lot of people, maybe it's the cold winters and the hot summers. Like you just gotta love it to live here, or else you probably would go live somewhere more pleasant. But people are really proud of where they're from here, and I appreciate that because I'm proud of my community and where I came from. And then I think the third one is it's by the water. Like I'm an aqua nut. Like I love that we have a city that's a peninsula and is surrounded by water on 3 sides. I love it.
I think instead of saying favorite things, I think it's more kind of favorite things about New England. I think it's kind of more what it encompasses better. But I agree. I think you're right. The sports is cool. I'm not like big into like all the sports, but I think it's really cool that there's so many. I gotta say, the summer here, it's incredible. I love the summer here. It's that's why it's worth going through the other 8 months of miserable weather.
Right. Exactly right.
And man, people are kind of minds their own business. It's just they love that. It's just like everybody's doing their own thing. Well, I don't think we have time for the least favorite, or maybe we do, but I just gotta say my least favorite is how people.
I knew you were gonna say that. I love how people drive. Really quick tangent. Really quick tangent. I've driven in the city for quite some time. I think I'm better than the average Boston driver, if I do say so myself. But one year, a couple of years ago, I got rear-ended and I got a rental car for the week while they fixed my car. And the rental car had Arizona plates on it. Boy, did I see the city through a different lens when I was driving a car from out of state. I got honked at, flipped the bird at, swore at, and meanwhile, I drive every day and it's fine. And I'm like, I'm one of you. Why are you guys being so mean to me?
Wow.
Because the out-of-state plates. The out-of-state plates were vicious.
This explains a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like this. Wow.
That sums it up well.
Nina, thank you so much for coming to the show. Giving us all these amazing stories, amazing career information. We're gonna have you back, and next time we're gonna talk more in depth about New England,
That's part two.
We're gonna do a
That has
New
to be
England
part two.
special. I think that's
Yes.
kind of, and we're gonna dig deep in like Ben Affleck, Boston sports.
I love it.
Best Red Sox team from all the World Series champions. Like we're gonna go deep, even though I don't know anything about baseball. We're gonna talk about.
I'll take
all
my
that.
Paul Pierce picture off the wall. I'll show it to everybody. It'll be great.
The truth.
The truth. That's right, baby. This is a blast, Gons. Thank you.